The dust from the departing wagon train had barely settled when Emma Morgan realized she'd been left behind. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the Colorado Territory as she stood alone beside her broken trunk, tears streaking through the dirt on her face. Just yesterday, she had been traveling west with her aunt and uncle, heading for a new life in California. Now, they were gone, having departed at dawn without her while she'd been gathering water from a nearby stream. Emma's heart raced as the gravity of her situation became clear. It was 1867, and being abandoned in the wilderness of the Colorado Territory was tantamount to a death sentence for a 20-year-old woman traveling alone. Her slender fingers clutched at the locket around her neck, the last reminder of her parents, both lost to fever 2 years prior. "They cannot have simply forgotten me," she whispered to herself, though the evidence before her suggested otherwise. Her Aunt Gertrude had made no secret of her resentment at having to take in her late sister's child. Especially when Emma had rejected the marriage arrangement Gertrude had tried to force upon her back in St. Louis. The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled Emma from her despair. She turned quickly, one hand shielding her eyes from the sun as she scanned the horizon. A lone rider appeared, his silhouette growing larger as he approached from the direction opposite the departed wagons. Emma felt a flutter of fear. A woman alone had much to fear in these territories, especially from strange men. She looked around frantically for something to defend herself with, finally grasping a heavy branch that had fallen from a nearby cottonwood. The rider slowed his horse as he approached, and Emma could now see he was a tall man, broad-shouldered and sun-bronzed, with a weather-beaten hat pulled low over his eyes. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, dusty denims, a faded shirt, and leather chaps worn from use. "Madam," he called out, his voice deep but not threatening as he tipped his hat. "Seems you've been left in quite a predicament." Emma straightened her back, trying to appear braver than she felt. "I am perfectly fine, sir. My party will return for me shortly." The cowboy dismounted with easy grace, keeping a respectful distance. When he removed his hat, Emma saw that he had striking blue eyes that contrasted with his tanned skin and sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Name's Noah Tanner, madam. I've been tracking that wagon train for the past day, and I can tell you with certainty they ain't turning back. They crossed the river about 5 miles west, and they're making good time." Emma's composure faltered slightly. "That cannot be true. My aunt and uncle wouldn't simply leave me behind." Noah's expression softened with something like pity. "Wouldn't be the first time someone got left behind when slowing the party down wasn't an option. Was there trouble brewing between you and your folks?" Emma looked away, unwilling to admit the truth to this stranger. Her aunt had made it clear that Emma's refusal to marry the wealthy but repulsive Mr. Wilkerson back in St. Louis had been the final straw. Perhaps this abandonment was no accident after all. "What I mean to say, miss." Noah paused, waiting for her name. "Emma." "Emma Morgan," she replied, still clutching her makeshift weapon. "Miss Morgan, what I mean to say is that wagon train is heading into dangerous territory with the Navajo and Apache stirred up lately. They won't risk turning back, not even for one of their own." Emma felt the blood drain from her face as the reality of her situation became undeniable. "What am I to do then?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. Noah surveyed the meager possessions scattered around her: a trunk with a broken latch, a small carpet bag, and a bonnet that had fallen in the dirt. His gaze returned to Emma's face, taking in her simple calico dress and determined expression despite the fear in her eyes. "You'll go with me now," he said simply. "Pueblo's 3 days' ride from here. I can get you there safely, and you can decide your future from there." Emma stiffened. "Sir, I cannot possibly travel alone with a man I just met. It would be most improper." Noah's mouth quirked up at one corner. "Miss Morgan, with all due respect, your choices are limited. You can come with me to Pueblo, or you can stay here and hope another traveler comes along before the wolves, or worse, find you after nightfall." As if to emphasize his point, a distant howl echoed across the plains. Emma involuntarily stepped closer to the cowboy, then caught herself. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, lifting her chin. "You don't," Noah replied honestly. "But I give you my word as a man that I'll see you safely to town, and not a hair on your head will be harmed by me or anyone else while you're in my care." Emma considered her options, which were, as he pointed out, severely limited. The sun would set in a few hours, and the thought of spending the night alone in this wild place made her blood run cold. "Very well, Mr. Tanner," she finally said. I accept your offer of escort to Pueblo. Noah nodded once. Good decision. He moved toward her trunk. What's essential in here? My horse can't carry all this and the both of us too. Emma quickly sorted through her possessions, selecting a change of clothes, her mother's Bible, and a few personal items. The rest, mostly the fine dresses and impractical shoes her aunt had insisted she bring, would have to be left behind. I'm ready, she said after repacking her smaller carpet bag. Noah secured her bag to his saddle, then turned to her. Ever ridden astride before? Emma blushed. Certainly not. Ladies ride side saddle. Not out here they don't, Noah replied. Not if they want to stay on the horse when trouble comes. Before Emma could protest further, Noah had lifted her effortlessly onto his horse. She gasped at the unexpected contact, then again at finding herself straddling the animal in her dress. This is most improper, she muttered, trying to arrange her skirts to preserve her modesty. This is survival, Noah countered, swinging up behind her with practiced ease. His arms came around her to take the reins, creating a secure circle that Emma found both alarming and oddly comforting. Hold on, he instructed, and then they were moving, leaving behind the last vestiges of Emma's former life. As they rode, Emma became acutely aware of the man behind her, the steady rise and fall of his chest against her back, the strength in his arms as he guided the horse, and the faint scent of leather and pine that clung to him. Have you been in these territories long, Mr. Tanner? She asked, trying to distract herself from their improper proximity. Call me Noah, he replied. And yes, going on 10 years now, came west after the war ended. You fought in the war? Emma asked, curious despite herself. Union cavalry, he said simply. Saw enough fighting to last a lifetime. Emma nodded, understanding his reluctance to elaborate. And what do you do now? Bit of everything. Drive cattle mostly, do some scouting for the army when they need it, hunting and trapping in winter. A man of many talents, Emma observed. Noah chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest and into her back. Jack of all trades, master of none, as my pa used to say. They fell into silence as the horse maintained a steady pace westward. Emma had never been this close to a man before, and she found herself both scandalized and intrigued by the forced intimacy of their situation. As the sun began to set, Noah guided the horse toward a small copse of trees near a creek. We'll make camp here for the night, he announced, dismounting with fluid grace before reaching up to help Emma down. Her legs were stiff and sore from the unaccustomed riding position, and she stumbled slightly as her feet touched the ground. Noah's strong hands steadied her, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary before he released her and turned to unsaddle the horse. Can I help with anything? Emma asked, feeling useless as Noah efficiently set up their camp. You could gather some kindling for the fire, he suggested, nodding toward the edges of the copse. Emma set about her task, grateful to have something useful to do. As she collected small branches, she contemplated her situation. By all societal standards, she was compromised beyond redemption, spending the night unchaperoned with a man she'd just met. Yet what choice did she have? Her aunt and uncle had abandoned her, leaving her to die in the wilderness. This stranger, this Noah Tanner, had offered her safety when he could have just as easily ridden past her or worse. Perhaps the rules of polite society didn't apply in this wild country after all. When she returned with an armful of kindling, Noah had already laid out bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire pit he dug. Thank you, he said, taking the kindling from her and arranging it expertly. Within minutes, he had a small fire crackling cheerfully. Hungry? He asked, reaching into his saddlebags. Emma nodded, suddenly realizing she hadn't eaten since dawn. Noah handed her a strip of dried beef and a biscuit that had seen better days. It's not much, he apologized, but it'll keep your strength up. We'll have a proper meal when we reach Pueblo. It's perfectly adequate, Emma assured him, though the tough jerky was unlike anything she'd eaten before. Thank you for sharing your provisions. They ate in companionable silence, the crackling of the fire and the distant calls of night creatures the only sounds. When they finished, Noah offered her a canteen of water. Get some rest, he advised. We've got a long ride tomorrow. Emma settled onto the bedroll he'd prepared for her, pulling a rough woolen blanket around her shoulders against the cooling night air. Across the fire, Noah leaned against his saddle, hat pulled low over his eyes, but she could tell he wasn't sleeping. Will you rest at all? She asked softly. Later, he replied. Need to keep watch for a while. Emma wanted to ask what dangers might be lurking in the darkness, but decided she'd rather not know. Instead, she said, "Thank you, Mr. Tanner Noah, for helping me today." He lifted his hat slightly to look at her, the firelight casting shadows across his handsome features. "Get some sleep, Emma. Dawn comes early out here." Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Emma as she stared up at the star-filled sky. Never had she felt so vulnerable, yet there was a strange exhilaration in facing the unknown with only this enigmatic cowboy as her protector. Eventually, the rhythmic sounds of the night and her own weariness overcame her anxiety, and she drifted into a fitful slumber. Emma awoke to the smell of coffee. Opening her eyes, she found Noah crouched by a small morning fire, pouring the dark brew into a tin cup. Dawn was just breaking, painting the eastern sky in delicate hues of pink and gold. "Morning," he greeted her. "Coffee?" Emma sat up, pushing her tangled hair from her face. She must look a fright, she realized, having slept in her clothes with no way to properly groom herself. "Yes, please," she replied, accepting the cup he offered. The coffee was strong and bitter, but the warmth was welcome against the morning chill. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, noting the shadows under his eyes. "Enough," Noah replied, though she suspected that wasn't true. "We should get moving soon. I want to make it to the Vasquez crossing by nightfall." Emma nodded, sipping her coffee. "How much farther to Pueblo?" "2 more days if the weather holds and we don't run into trouble." The casual way he mentioned trouble sent a shiver down Emma's spine. "What kind of trouble might we expect?" Noah's expression turned serious. "Territorial disputes between settlers and natives have been heating up. Armies been pushing the tribes onto reservations, and not everyone's going peacefully. Then there's your garden variety outlaws looking to rob travelers." "That's concerning," Emma said, trying to maintain her composure. "Don't worry," Noah assured her with a slight smile. "I know this territory like the back of my hand, and I'll keep us away from trouble." They broke camp quickly after that, Noah efficiently packing up while Emma did her best to make herself presentable with the limited resources available. She managed to rebraid her hair and wash her face with a small amount of water from the canteen, but she still felt grubby and disheveled. Once again, Noah lifted her onto his horse before mounting behind her. Emma was surprised to find the arrangement felt almost natural today, her body less tense as they set off across the vast landscape. As they rode, Noah pointed out various landmarks and shared stories of his time in the territory. Emma found herself fascinated by his tales of survival and adventure, so different from the sheltered life she had known in St. Louis. "How did you end up traveling west with your aunt and uncle?" Noah asked during a brief rest to water the horse at a small stream. Emma hesitated, then decided there was little point in concealing the truth. "After my parents died of fever, I had nowhere else to go. My Aunt Gertrude, my mother's sister, took me in, but she made it clear I was a burden. When Uncle Frederick decided to seek his fortune in California, I was brought along largely because Aunt Gertrude needed help with the cooking and washing." "And they left you behind?" Noah's voice had an edge of anger. "Just like that," Emma nodded, blinking back sudden tears. "I suspect it was no accident. The night before, I overheard them discussing how I'd been nothing but trouble since St. Louis, refusing the match they'd arranged for me with a man 3 times my age." Noah's jaw tightened. "Some people don't deserve to be called family." "Perhaps it's for the best," Emma said, surprising herself with the realization. "I was never going to have the life I wanted with them." "And what life do you want, Emma Morgan?" Noah asked, his blue eyes studying her with genuine interest. The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked what she wanted before. I'm not entirely sure," she admitted. "Something more than being someone's wife or someone's burden, I suppose. I'd like to be useful, to make my own way somehow." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Pueblo's growing fast. Might be opportunities there for a woman with determination." "I hope so," Emma replied. "I have little money and fewer prospects, but I'm willing to work hard." "That counts for a lot out here," Noah said, helping her back onto the horse. "The West doesn't care much about where you came from, only what you can do." They continued their journey through the afternoon, the landscape gradually changing as they moved westward. The flat plains gave way to more varied terrain, with rocky outcroppings and deeper ravines. Noah explained they were following the Arkansas River, though often at a distance to avoid the more treacherous parts of the trail. As the sun began its descent, Emma noticed Noah becoming increasingly vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. His body had tensed behind her, and she could feel his alertness like a physical presence. "Is something wrong?" she finally asked. Probably nothing, he replied, though his tone belied his words. Saw some dust about a mile back. Could be riders, following us. Emma asked, fear creeping into her voice. Can't be sure, but we're going to take a detour just to be safe. Noah guided the horse into a narrow ravine, following what appeared to be a game trail. The walls of rock on either side provided cover, but Emma couldn't help feeling trapped in the confined space. They rode in tense silence for nearly an hour before emerging onto open ground again. Noah immediately steered them toward a dense stand of trees in the distance. We'll make camp there tonight, he said. It's not the Vasquez crossing I was aiming for, but it'll do. By the time they reached the trees, darkness was falling rapidly. Noah helped Emma dismount, then quickly unsaddled the horse, working with practiced efficiency in the fading light. No fire tonight, he told her quietly, laying out their bedrolls closer together than the previous night. Emma nodded, understanding the implications. Someone might indeed be following them, and a fire would only announce their location. The thought sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the cooling night air. Here, Noah said, handing her another piece of jerky and a strip of dried apple. It's not much of a supper, but it's quiet. They ate in silence, listening to the night sounds around them. When they finished, Noah checked his revolver before tucking it back into its holster. Try to get some sleep, he told Emma. I'll keep watch. You can't stay awake forever, she protested. You need rest too. I'll wake you if I need to close my eyes, he promised. Now sleep. Tomorrow may be a long day. Emma lay down, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Despite her exhaustion, sleep seemed impossible with the knowledge that potential danger lurked nearby. She watched as Noah positioned himself against a tree trunk, his silhouette barely visible in the darkness. Noah, she whispered after a while, who do you think might be following us? He was quiet so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed. Could be nothing. Could be some of Barlow's gang. They've been raiding settlements and robbing travelers between here and Pueblo. Outlaws. Emma's voice trembled slightly. Yes, but they usually go after bigger parties with more to steal. One man and a woman might not interest them enough to follow. The might not did little to reassure Emma. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I won't let anything happen to you, Noah said softly, seeming to sense her fear. I gave you my word. Strangely, Emma believed him. Despite having known this man for barely more than a day, she trusted him with her life. Perhaps it was necessity, or perhaps there was something inherently trustworthy about Noah Tanner with his direct gaze and quiet competence. Thank you, she whispered back. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her anxiety and Emma drifted into uneasy sleep. Her dreams were troubled, filled with pursuing shadows and the thunder of hooves. She awoke once in the night to find Noah still vigilant, his eyes reflecting what little moonlight filtered through the trees. Their gazes met briefly before she slipped back into slumber. The next time Emma opened her eyes, the first gray light of dawn was seeping through the trees. Noah was crouched beside her, one hand gently shaking her shoulder. We need to move, he said quietly, his voice tense. Now, Emma sat up immediately, fully alert at the urgency in his tone. What is it? Riders, 4, maybe 5, coming this way. Fear clutched at Emma's throat as she scrambled to her feet. Noah was already rolling up their bedding with swift, efficient movements. How close? She asked, helping him pack. Too close, mount up. Within minutes, they were moving through the trees as quietly as possible, Noah leading the horse on foot to minimize noise. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as they picked their way through the underbrush, every cracking twig sounding like a gunshot to her frightened ears. When they reached the edge of the tree line, Noah paused, surveying the open ground beyond. In the growing light, Emma could see a vast expanse of rolling prairie stretching before them, with rocky hills rising in the distance. We're going to have to make a run for those hills, Noah said, pointing. There's a canyon there, I know. We can lose them in it if we're lucky. And if we're not lucky, Emma couldn't help asking. Noah's expression was grim as he mounted behind her. Then we fight. Hold on tight. With that, he urged the horse forward, and they broke from the cover of the trees at a gallop. Emma clung to the saddle horn, her body moving instinctively with the rhythm of the horse as they thundered across the open ground. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the hills when a shout rang out behind them, followed by the unmistakable crack of a rifle. Noah swore under his breath and urged the horse to greater speed. Keep your head down, he shouted above the wind and hoofbeats. Emma pressed herself lower against the horse's neck, terror making her heart race. Another shot rang out, this one closer, kicking up dirt just yards to their right. Noah abruptly changed direction, veering toward a shallow ravine that Emma hadn't noticed before. The horse slid down the embankment, nearly unseating them both before regaining its footing and continuing its headlong flight along the bottom of the ravine. More shots echoed behind them, but the natural trench provided some cover from their pursuers. Emma risked a glance back and saw 4 riders at the top of the ravine, their horses rearing as the men fired down at them. "Almost there," Noah called, and Emma turned to see the ravine widening into the mouth of a broader canyon ahead. As they burst into the canyon, Noah guided the horse sharply to the right, following what appeared to be a dry creek bed that twisted between towering rock formations. The horse, laboring now from the extended gallop, nevertheless responded gamely to Noah's guidance. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter as they navigated the increasingly complex network of passages within the canyon. Finally, Noah slowed their pace, guiding the horse into a narrow side canyon that ended in a small box canyon with steep walls on 3 sides. "They won't find us easily here," he said, dismounting and helping Emma down. "And if they do, there's only one way in, which makes it easier to defend." Emma's legs trembled as they touched the ground, adrenaline and fear making her unsteady. "Who are they? Why are they chasing us?" Noah led the exhausted horse to the back of the canyon where a small seep provided minimal water. "Barlow's men, I'd guess. As for why," he hesitated. "I've had run-ins with them before, testified against 2 of their gang last year in Denver, got them hanged." Emma stared at him. "So they're after you, not me, likely." Noah's expression was apologetic. "I'm sorry, Emma, I didn't think they'd be this far south. I'd never have put you in danger if I'd known." "You couldn't have known," Emma said, surprising herself with her lack of accusation. "And you're risking your life to protect me. I can hardly blame you for having enemies." Noah's tense expression softened slightly. "You're taking this better than most would." "What choice do I have?" Emma replied pragmatically. "Besides, I'm beginning to think life in the territories requires a certain flexibility of expectations." A ghost of a smile touched Noah's lips. "That it does." He moved to the entrance of the box canyon, peering cautiously around the corner. "I don't hear them anymore, but they'll be searching." "We should stay put until dark," Emma nodded, moving to sit on a flat rock against the canyon wall. The morning sun had not yet reached into their hiding place, and she shivered slightly in the cool air. "Here," Noah said, noticing her discomfort. He shrugged out of his leather jacket and handed it to her. "Won't you be cold?" Emma asked, even as she gratefully accepted the garment. "I'm used to it," he replied with a shrug. Emma slipped on the jacket, which engulfed her smaller frame. It smelled of leather, horse, and that indefinable scent that she now associated with Noah. The warmth of it, still carrying his body heat, was oddly comforting. They settled into a watchful silence, Noah periodically checking the entrance to their hiding place while Emma tended to the horse, offering it what little water they could spare from their canteen. As the morning wore on and the sun climbed higher, the temperature in the box canyon rose accordingly. Emma removed the jacket, folding it carefully and placing it on a nearby rock. "Tell me about your life before the territories," she said, breaking the long silence. "You mentioned fighting in the war." Noah, who had been cleaning his revolver, looked up with slight surprise at her question. After a moment, he nodded. "Not much to tell. Grew up on a small farm in Ohio, joined up in '62 when I was 18. Fought with the 6th Ohio Cavalry until Appomattox." "And after the war?" Emma prompted when he fell silent. Noah's hands resumed their methodical cleaning of the weapon. "Went home to find my parents had both died of typhoid while I was away. Farm was foreclosed on. Didn't have much reason to stay in Ohio after that, so I headed west." The simple tragedy of his story struck Emma deeply. "I'm sorry about your parents," she said softly. "It seems we have that in common." Noah nodded, acknowledging her words. "What about you? Before St. Louis, I mean." Emma smiled slightly, remembering. "We lived in Boston. My father was a professor of literature at the university there. My mother taught me at home literature, mathematics, even some Latin. They had progressive ideas about education for women." "Explains why you speak so proper," Noah observed with a slight smile. Emma laughed softly. "My aunt was constantly horrified by my blue-stocking tendencies, as she called them. She believed a woman needed only enough education to read the Bible and manage household accounts." "Your aunt sounds like a fool," Noah said bluntly. "Intelligence is a gift, not something to be ashamed of." His words warmed Emma more than the sun now streaming into their hiding place. Few men in her experience had valued a woman's mind. Their conversation continued intermittently throughout the day, sharing stories from their respective pasts as they waited for nightfall. Emma learned that Noah had a younger sister who had married and moved to Oregon before the war, and whom he hadn't seen since. Noah, in turn, listened with evident interest as Emma described her dreams of perhaps becoming a teacher or even a writer someday. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across their hideout, Noah became more alert, his attention returning to the matter at hand. "We'll wait until full dark," he said, checking his revolver one final time before holstering it. "Then try to slip past them and continue toward Pueblo. It's risky, but staying here isn't an option. We're too exposed and we're running low on water." Emma nodded, pushing down the fear that threatened to overwhelm her again. "What can I do to help?" "Stay close to me and do exactly as I say without question," Noah replied, his expression serious. "If something happens to me, take the horse and ride hard for Pueblo. Follow the North Star, keeping it slightly to your right. You should reach town in a day if you don't stop." "Nothing is going to happen to you," Emma said firmly, unwilling to contemplate that possibility. Noah's smile was brief but genuine. "I like your confidence, Miss Morgan." As darkness fell, they prepared to leave their hiding place. Noah saddled the horse, which had rested throughout the day, while Emma repacked their meager supplies. When all was ready, Noah helped her mount before swinging up behind her. "Remember," he whispered against her ear, "absolute silence." They moved carefully out of the box canyon and through the winding passages of the larger canyon system. The quarter moon provided just enough light to navigate by, though Noah seemed to rely more on memory and instinct than sight as he guided them through the darkness. Emma's every sense was heightened with tension. Each clink of the horse's hooves against stone sounded thunderous to her ears, and every shadow seemed to conceal a waiting enemy. Noah's solid presence behind her was her only anchor against the rising tide of fear. They had nearly reached the mouth of the canyon when a shot shattered the silence, the bullet ricocheting off rock to their left. Noah immediately urged the horse into a gallop, abandoning stealth for speed. "Hold tight," he commanded as they burst from the canyon into open country. More shots followed, accompanied by shouts and the sound of pursuing hoofbeats. Noah kept the horse at a full gallop, weaving an unpredictable path across the moonlit prairie to make them a more difficult target. Emma clung to the saddle horn, her body moving instinctively with the horse's powerful strides. The wind whipped tears from her eyes as they flew across the landscape, the sounds of pursuit gradually receding behind them. For nearly an hour, Noah pushed the horse hard before finally slowing to a more sustainable pace. He listened intently for several minutes before speaking. "I think we've lost them for now," he said, his breath warm against Emma's neck, "but we need to keep moving. Pueblo's still a full day's ride from here." They continued through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horse. Noah remained vigilant, frequently checking behind them for signs of pursuit. Emma, exhausted beyond belief, found herself drifting in and out of consciousness, supported by Noah's arms around her. Dawn found them crossing a shallow river, the horse picking its way carefully across the rocky bottom. On the far bank, Noah finally called a halt. "We both need rest," he said, helping Emma dismount. Her legs buckled as they touched the ground, and Noah caught her before she could fall. "Whoa there, I've got you." Emma was too exhausted to feel embarrassed by her weakness or by the way Noah's arms encircled her waist to support her. "Just need a moment," she murmured, though in truth she felt she could sleep for a week. Noah helped her sit beneath a cottonwood tree, then quickly unsaddled the horse and let it drink from the river. When he returned, he had their remaining food, a few strips of jerky and the last of the dried apples. "Eat," he urged, handing Emma her share. "We'll rest for 2 hours, no more, then we push on to Pueblo." Emma wanted to protest that 2 hours was hardly enough, but the worry lines etched on Noah's face stopped her. He was doing everything in his power to keep them both alive. The least she could do was cooperate without complaint. They ate in silence, the meager meal doing little to satisfy Emma's hunger but providing enough sustenance to continue. When they finished, Noah settled beside her against the tree trunk, their shoulders touching. "Sleep," he told her. "I'll wake you when it's time to move." "You need rest too," Emma protested through a yawn. "I'll close my eyes for a bit," Noah promised, though she doubted he would truly sleep. Despite her determination to stay awake and ensure Noah got some rest as well, Emma succumbed to exhaustion within minutes. She drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, vaguely aware at some point of her head coming to rest against Noah's shoulder. When she awoke, the sun was considerably higher in the sky. She realized with a start that her head was still pillowed on Noah's shoulder, and worse, his arm had somehow come around her while they slept, holding her securely against his side. Emma sat up abruptly, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right," Noah interrupted, his own expression slightly chagrined as he withdrew his arm. "We both needed the rest." He glanced at the sun. "We've slept longer than I intended. We should get moving." They prepared to leave quickly, both avoiding direct eye contact as they worked. Emma couldn't help wondering what Noah thought of her now. Proper ladies did not fall asleep on the shoulders of men they barely knew, no matter how dire the circumstances. Yet as Noah helped her mount the horse, his hands were as gentle and respectful as ever, and when he settled behind her, there was no suggestion of impropriety in the way he held the reins around her. "Pueblo's about 8 hours' ride from here if we push hard," he told her as they set off. "We should make it by nightfall." The day stretched before them, hot and dusty as they rode across the open country. Noah maintained a brisk pace, clearly anxious to reach the safety of town before their pursuers could catch up. They spoke little, saving their energy for the journey. As the afternoon waned, Emma began to see signs of civilization, fenced fields in the distance, a weathered signpost pointing toward Pueblo, occasional wagon tracks in the dirt. Her spirits lifted at these indicators that their ordeal might soon be over. Then, just as the distant buildings of Pueblo came into view on the horizon, Noah suddenly reined the horse to a halt. "Riders," he said tersely. "Coming fast from the south." Emma's heart sank as she squinted in the direction he indicated. Sure enough, a cloud of dust marked the approach of several horsemen, moving rapidly to intercept their path to town. "It's them, isn't it?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Noah's jaw tightened as he assessed their options. "Yes, and they've cut us off from the main road to town." "What do we do?" Noah pointed to a line of trees following a creek bed to their right. "We'll make for those trees, then follow the creek toward town. It's longer but might give us cover." They set off at a gallop, the tired horse responding valiantly to Noah's urgings. Behind them, the distant riders changed course, having spotted their quarry. The trees seemed impossibly far away as they raced across the open ground, the pursuing riders gaining ground with every passing minute. Emma found herself praying as she had never prayed before, begging God for just a little more speed, a little more time. They were within yards of the tree line when the first bullets began to fly past them. Noah swore and leaned lower over the horse, urging it to a final burst of speed that carried them into the relative safety of the trees. The creek bank provided a natural trench that they followed at a breakneck pace, the horse sliding and scrambling along the muddy ground. Behind them, their pursuers crashed into the trees, shouting to each other as they attempted to maintain pursuit in the confined space. "Almost to town," Noah encouraged as they rounded a bend in the creek and saw the outlying buildings of Pueblo ahead. But their horse, exhausted from days of hard riding, was faltering. Its stride became uneven, its breathing labored. Noah reluctantly slowed their pace, knowing that pushing the animal to collapse would doom them both. The sounds of pursuit grew closer as their pace decreased. Emma looked back to see two riders emerging from the trees behind them, gaining rapidly on their tired mount. "Noah," she said urgently, pointing back. He followed her gaze and made a quick decision. "When I say jump, roll off the horse to the right and stay down," he instructed, drawing his revolver. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you, trust me." Emma nodded, preparing herself for his signal. They had reached a bend in the creek where a fallen tree created a natural barricade. As they approached it, Noah shouted, "Now!" Emma let go of the saddle horn and threw herself sideways, hitting the ground hard and rolling as instructed. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs, but she managed to scramble behind the fallen tree as Noah had clearly intended. Noah himself dismounted with more control, slapping the horse's flank to send it running forward while he joined Emma behind their makeshift barrier. He positioned himself beside her, revolver ready as their pursuers came around the bend. "Stay down," he warned as the first rider appeared. The man spotted them and raised his rifle, but Noah was faster. His revolver cracked twice, and the rider tumbled from his saddle with a cry of pain. The second man reined in sharply at the sight of his fallen comrade, bringing his own weapon to bear. Emma pressed herself against the ground as bullets splintered the wood above her head. Noah returned fire methodically, each shot deliberate. After an exchange that seemed to last forever but was probably only seconds, the second rider also fell. In the sudden silence that followed, Emma could hear only the pounding of her heart and Noah's measured breathing beside her. Then, distantly, came the welcome sound of hoofbeats departing rapidly the remaining members of the gang, apparently deciding the pursuit wasn't worth the cost. "Are they gone?" Emma whispered after several tense minutes had passed. Noah cautiously raised his head to look over their barricade. "Seems so. The two I hit are still down and I don't see or hear the others." He stood slowly, revolver still ready. "Stay here while I check." Emma watched anxiously as Noah approached the fallen men. He checked each briefly before returning to her side. "Dead?" she asked quietly. Noah nodded grimly. "They didn't leave us much choice." He holstered his weapon and helped Emma to her feet. "Are you hurt? That was quite a fall you took." Now that the immediate danger had passed, Emma became aware of various aches and pains: a scraped elbow, bruised hip, and what would certainly be impressive bruises along her right side. But nothing seemed serious. "I'm all right," she assured him. "What about our horse?" "Gone, I expect," Noah replied. "But we're not far from town now. We can walk the rest of the way." Emma nodded, and they set off along the creek bed toward Pueblo, both watchful for any sign of the remaining gang members. After perhaps half an hour of walking, they emerged from the trees onto a proper road leading into town. The sun was setting as they finally reached the outskirts of Pueblo. Emma had never seen a more welcome sight than the dusty main street with its wooden buildings and oil lamps being lit against the gathering darkness. People stared as they passed a disheveled woman in a torn and dirty dress walking beside a grim-faced, armed cowboy who looked ready for trouble. Noah ignored the stares, guiding Emma directly to a two-story building marked Pueblo Hotel. Inside, a balding man looked up from the desk with raised eyebrows at their appearance. Before he could comment, Noah placed several coins on the counter. "2 rooms, please," he said firmly. "And information on where we might find the sheriff." The clerk's expression became more respectful at the sight of money. "Sheriff's office is 2 doors down," he said, pushing a register toward Noah. "As for rooms, I've got one left on the 2nd floor. Been busy with the cattle buyers in town." Noah frowned. "The lady needs a proper room." "It's all right," Emma interjected, touching Noah's arm. "After what we've been through, a roof of any kind will suffice." Noah looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "1 room, then," he told the clerk, signing the register. The clerk handed over a key. "Room 6, top of the stairs, end of the hall. There's a bathing room at the end of the hall that the lady might appreciate," he added with a pointed glance at their trail-worn appearance. "Thank you," Emma said sincerely, the thought of a real bath almost bringing tears to her eyes. "I need to speak with the sheriff about Barlow's men," Noah told her as they climbed the stairs. "Will you be all right alone for a while?" Emma nodded. "I'll be fine. A bath and sleep are all I need." The room, when Noah unlocked the door, was simple but clean: a bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with pitcher and basin, a small table with a lamp, and a cushioned chair by the window. To Emma, it looked like absolute luxury. "I'll return as soon as I can," Noah promised, lingering in the doorway. "Lock the door behind me." After he left, Emma secured the door as instructed, then sank onto the edge of the bed in exhaustion. For several minutes, she simply sat there, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 3 days. She had been abandoned by her only living relatives, rescued by a stranger who had become her protector, pursued by outlaws, shot at, and forced to flee for her life. By all standards of her former world, she was ruined beyond redemption, having spent 3 nights unchaperoned with a man. Yet here she was, alive and relatively unharmed in Pueblo, Colorado territory. With a deep sigh, Emma roused herself to action. She gathered the small amount of clean clothing she had managed to bring from her carpet bag and went in search of the bathing room. The luxury of hot water, apparently, the hotel kept a boiler running for its guests, was almost overwhelming. Emma scrubbed away days of dust, sweat, and fear, washing her hair thoroughly and feeling human again for the first time since being left behind by the wagon train. When she returned to the room, dressed in her cleanest remaining dress and with her damp hair braided neatly, she found Noah waiting in the hallway outside their door. "I was beginning to worry," he said, his eyes taking in her transformed appearance. "The bath was too wonderful to rush," Emma explained with a small smile. "Did you speak with the sheriff?" Noah nodded, following her into the room after she unlocked the door. "He's sending men out to collect the bodies. Says he's been after Barlow's gang for months and he's grateful for any reduction in their numbers." Will there be trouble for you, for killing them? Emma asked, concerned. No, self-defense, clear and simple. They were wanted men with rewards on their heads, actually. Noah reached into his pocket and withdrew a small pouch that clinked as he set it on the table. Which reminds me this is yours. What is it? Emma asked, puzzled. The reward money, $200. Emma stared at him in disbelief. But you're the one who shot them, Noah shrugged. Wouldn't have been in that position if not for protecting you. Besides, you need it more than I do. Consider it. Compensation for being dragged into my troubles. Emma wanted to refuse. It felt wrong somehow to profit from death, even of men who had tried to kill them. But the practical part of her recognized that this money represented independence, a chance to establish herself in this new place without being at the mercy of others' charity. Thank you, she said finally. Though I wish it had come by different means. Noah nodded in understanding. I brought food, he said, changing the subject. He indicated a covered tray on the small table that Emma hadn't noticed in her surprise over the reward money. Thought you might be hungry. Emma's stomach growled audibly at the mention of food, making them both smile. Starving, she admitted. They shared the simple meal: beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie in companionable silence. When they finished, an awkward moment ensued as they both contemplated the single bed. I'll sleep in the chair, Noah said quickly, anticipating her concern. That's hardly fair after everything you've done, Emma protested. You need proper rest as much as I do. I've slept in worse places, Noah assured her with a slight smile. The chair is luxury compared to some. Emma wanted to argue further but wasn't sure what alternative to suggest. The proprieties she had been raised with seemed simultaneously important and absurdly irrelevant after all they had experienced together. At least take the quilt, she finally said, pulling it from the bed and offering it to him. Noah accepted it with a nod of thanks. You should rest, he told her. Tomorrow we can figure out your next steps. The reminder that their journey together was effectively oversent an unexpected pang through Emma's chest. What would happen now? Noah had fulfilled his promise to bring her safely to Pueblo. He had no further obligation to her. Emma slipped into bed, still contemplating this unwelcome realization as Noah extinguished the lamp, plunging the room into darkness save for the moonlight filtering through the thin curtains. She could just make out his silhouette as he settled into the chair, arranging the quilt over himself. Noah, she said softly into the darkness. Yes. His voice came equally soft in reply. Thank you for everything. I would have died out there if not for you. There was a moment of silence before he responded. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Emma Morgan, but you're welcome all the same. Emma smiled to herself, oddly comforted by his assessment of her character. Good night, Noah. Good night, Emma. Sleep came quickly despite the tumult of her thoughts. Emma's last conscious awareness was of feeling safe for the first time in days, knowing Noah was near. She awoke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sounds of a town already bustling with morning activity. For a moment she was disoriented, then the events of the past days rushed back to her. Emma sat up quickly, looking toward the chair where Noah had slept. It was empty, the quilt neatly folded and placed on the seat. A moment of panic seized her had he left without saying goodbye. Before she noticed a folded note on the table beside a steaming cup of coffee, she reached for the note, unfolding it to reveal a strong, clear hand. Gone to retrieve our horse, back by midday, rest well, N. Relief flooded through Emma, followed quickly by confusion at the strength of that relief. Why should it matter so much whether Noah Tanner had left or not? Their arrangement had been for him to bring her safely to Pueblo, which he had done at considerable risk to himself. She had no claim on him beyond that, yet the thought of continuing alone in this frontier town filled her with a loneliness she hadn't anticipated. Sometime during their harrowing journey, Noah had become more than just her rescuer. He had become someone she trusted, someone whose company she valued. Perhaps even someone she cared for, though such feelings were surely premature and unwise. Emma sipped the coffee he had left for her, appreciating this small act of thoughtfulness as she contemplated her situation. She had $200, a substantial sum that would allow her to secure lodging and support herself while seeking employment. But what kind of employment? What place could she make for herself here in this rough frontier town? After finishing her coffee, Emma dressed in her last clean dress, a simple blue cotton that had survived the journey relatively unscathed. She arranged her hair as neatly as possible with the limited resources at hand, then decided to venture downstairs to learn more about Pueblo and its possibilities. The hotel's small dining room was nearly empty at this hour between breakfast and lunch. A plump, middle-aged woman approached as Emma entered. "Good morning, miss. Can I get you something to eat?" the woman asked kindly. "Just tea, please," Emma replied, "and perhaps some information if you wouldn't mind. I'm new to Pueblo and trying to find my bearings." The woman nodded understandingly. "Happy to help. I'm Martha Wilson, my husband, and I own the hotel. You came in with that tall cowboy yesterday, didn't you, looking like you'd been through the wars?" "Yes," Emma confirmed, blushing slightly at the memory of her disheveled appearance. "I'm Emma Morgan. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wilson." "Likewise, dear. Sit yourself down and I'll bring that tea." When Martha returned with the tea, she sat across from Emma at the small table. "Now, what sort of information are you looking for?" "I need to find employment and more permanent lodging," Emma explained. "I'm not sure what opportunities might be available for a woman in Pueblo." "Depends on your skills," Martha replied practically. "Can you cook, clean, sew?" "Yes to all three, though I wouldn't call myself exceptional at any of them," Emma admitted. "I was educated in literature and mathematics by my father, who was a professor in Boston. I had hoped perhaps to find work as a teacher." Martha's eyebrows rose in interest. "Is that so?" "Well, that's fortunate timing. The town council just voted last month to establish a proper school. Been using the church for lessons when the circuit preacher isn't around, but they're building a schoolhouse now. Should be finished by end of summer." Hope surged in Emma's heart. "Do you know who I should speak with about a teaching position?" "That'd be Mayor Simmons. He chairs the town council, has an office above the bank on Main Street." Martha studied Emma thoughtfully. "As for lodging, Mrs. Everett takes in boarders respectable widows and single ladies only. It's a bit dear at $4 a week with meals, but it's clean and proper." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. You've been extremely helpful," Emma said sincerely. Martha patted her hand. "Happy to assist, dear. It's not easy for a woman alone in these parts." She hesitated, then added with studied casualness, "That cowboy who brought you and he's not staying on, then?" Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Tanner was kind enough to escort me to Pueblo after I was separated from my traveling party. We have no formal arrangement beyond that." "I see," Martha replied, her tone suggesting she saw rather more than Emma was comfortable with. "Well, he seems a decent sort, not like some of the rough types we get through here." Before Emma could respond to this observation, the door to the dining room opened and Noah himself entered. He had clearly visited a barber, his hair neatly trimmed and his face clean-shaven, revealing a strong jaw that his trail stubble had partially obscured. He wore clean clothes as well as a fresh shirt and denims that, while still work clothes, were a marked improvement over his trail-worn attire. His eyes found Emma immediately, a smile warming his features as he approached. "Good morning," he greeted, removing his hat. "I see you've met Mrs. Wilson." "Indeed I have," Emma replied, returning his smile. "She's been very helpful in orienting me to Pueblo." Telling her about Mrs. Everett's boarding house and the school they're building, Martha confirmed, rising from her seat. "Can I bring you some coffee, Mr. Tanner?" "Thank you, madam, that would be appreciated," Noah replied politely. After Martha left to fetch the coffee, Noah took the chair she had vacated. "I found our horse," he reported. "He made it almost to town before some boys caught him. He's at the livery stable now, getting a well-earned rest and proper feed." "I'm glad," Emma said sincerely. "He saved our lives with his speed and endurance." Noah nodded agreement. "So, a teaching position?" he asked, clearly having overheard part of her conversation with Martha. "That suits you." "If they'll have me," Emma replied. "I have no formal credentials, but I am well educated." "Any town would be fortunate to have you teaching their children," Noah said with such conviction that Emma felt a flush of pleasure at his confidence in her. Martha returned with Noah's coffee, then tactfully withdrew to give them privacy. A slightly awkward silence fell between them after she left. "What will you do now?" Emma finally asked. "Will you stay in Pueblo?" Noah took a sip of his coffee before answering. "For a few days, at least. The sheriff wants me to give a full statement about Barlow's men for his report to the territorial governor." He hesitated, then added, "After that, I'm not sure. I've been drifting since the war, never staying anywhere too long." Emma nodded, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach at his words. Of course he wouldn't stay. Men like Noah Tanner didn't put down roots. They moved with the seasons and opportunities, free as the wind. "I should call on Mayor Simmons today," she said, changing the subject. "And Mrs. Everett as well to secure lodging." "I'll accompany you if you'd like," Noah offered, Pueblo's mostly decent folks, but a woman alone still attracts unwanted attention sometimes. Thank you, Emma accepted, both grateful for his protection and sad at the reminder that it was temporary. After finishing their drinks, they set out together to navigate Emma's first day in her new home. Their first stop was the mayor's office, where they were fortunate to find Mayor Simmons available to meet with them. The mayor, a portly man with impressive mutton chop whiskers, listened with interest as Emma explained her background and desire to teach. Noah remained quietly supportive at her side, occasionally adding a comment that emphasized Emma's capabilities. "Well, Miss Morgan, your timing is providential," Mayor Simmons declared when she had finished. "We've been advertising for a teacher in Denver and St. Louis, but with little success. Most qualified educators are reluctant to relocate to a frontier town. I understand their hesitation, but I find the prospect exciting rather than daunting," Emma replied honestly. "I believe education is vital to a community's future, especially in developing territories." The mayor smiled broadly at this response. "Well said. The position pays $40 a month, with the school term running from September through May. The new schoolhouse should be completed by late August. Until then, would you be willing to conduct some informal lessons for those children whose parents are eager for their education to continue through summer?" "I would be delighted," Emma agreed, hardly believing her good fortune. "A position, and one that would begin immediately. Excellent. I'll inform the town council at our meeting tomorrow evening. Assuming they approve, and I have no doubt they will, you can begin next Monday." After leaving the mayor's office, Emma could barely contain her excitement. "Can you believe it, Noah, a teaching position just like that?" Noah's smile was warm as he looked down at her. "I told you any town would be lucky to have you. Congratulations, Emma, I'm happy for you." Their next stop was Mrs. Everett's boarding house, a well-maintained two-story home on a quiet side street. The proprietress, a stern-faced widow in her 50s, eyed Noah suspiciously until Emma explained that he was merely escorting her for propriety's sake. "I run a respectable establishment," Mrs. Everett informed them primly. "No male visitors above the parlor floor, and all boarders must be in by 9 o'clock. Breakfast is at 6:30, dinner at noon for those who return for it, and supper at 6 sharp." Despite the strict rules, Emma found the boarding house clean and comfortable, with a small but pleasant room available on the second floor. She paid for 2 weeks in advance, relieved to have secured respectable accommodations. "When will you move your belongings?" Noah asked as they left the boarding house. "I have precious few belongings to move," Emma replied with a small laugh. "Just what's in my carpet bag at the hotel I can move in tomorrow." They spent the remainder of the day exploring Pueblo, with Noah pointing out various establishments of importance: the general store, the bank, the post office, and the small church that had been serving as the town's school. By the time they returned to the hotel for supper, Emma felt she had a reasonable understanding of her new home. Over their meal, Emma found herself watching Noah, trying to memorize the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the deep timbre of his voice, the competent strength of his hands. Tomorrow he would help her move to Mrs. Everett's, and then what? He would give his statement to the sheriff, perhaps stay another day or two, and then ride away, as was his nature. The thought brought an unexpected ache to her chest. In just 4 days, this man had become important to her in ways she could hardly articulate, even to herself. He had saved her life, yes, but it was more than gratitude she felt. There was a connection between them that transcended their brief acquaintance, a sense of understanding, of recognition. "Emma," Noah's voice pulled her from her reverie. "Is everything all right?" She realized she had been staring at him while lost in thought. "Yes, of course," she replied quickly. "Just thinking about everything that's happened, it's been quite a journey." "That it has," Noah agreed, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "One I won't soon forget." The following morning, Emma packed her few possessions and prepared to move to Mrs. Everett's boarding house. Noah insisted on accompanying her, carrying her carpet bag despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of managing it herself. "Humor me," he said with a small smile. "I'm still not entirely convinced Barlow doesn't have more men in the area who might recognize you." They walked in companionable silence through the streets of Pueblo, the morning sun already promising another hot day. Emma tried not to think about how this might be one of their last walks together, focusing instead on the excitement of her new position and lodgings. Mrs. Everett greeted them at the door, her expression marginally more welcoming than the previous day. Good morning, Miss Morgan. Your room is ready whenever you are. Thank you, Mrs. Everett, Emma replied politely. This is most kind of you. Noah set Emma's carpetbag just inside the door, clearly understanding he wasn't welcome to venture further into the boarding house. I should let you get settled, he said to Emma. I'm meeting with the sheriff at noon. Will I see you later? Emma asked, unable to keep a note of hope from her voice. I'll stop by this evening if that's acceptable, Noah replied, glancing at Mrs. Everett for approval. The older woman sniffed slightly but nodded. Parlor visits are permitted until 8 o'clock, provided the door remains open. Thank you, madam, Noah said, tipping his hat to her before turning back to Emma. Until this evening, then. Emma watched him walk away, a strange mixture of anticipation and dread filling her heart. Every meeting now felt like it might be their last, a countdown to an inevitable farewell that she wasn't prepared to face. Mrs. Everett showed Emma to her room, a small but neat space with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a chair by the window that overlooked the street. It was simple but comfortable, and more importantly, it was a place Emma could call her own, perhaps her first real home since her parents had died. After unpacking her few belongings, Emma spent the afternoon planning lessons for the informal summer classes she would begin on Monday. Mayor Simmons had mentioned there would likely be about 15 children of various ages, which would present a challenge in terms of differentiated instruction. But Emma welcomed the challenge, her mind already filling with ideas for engaging learning experiences. As evening approached, she found herself growing increasingly distracted, her thoughts turning repeatedly to Noah. She changed her dress twice before supper, finally settling on her blue cotton, the one Noah had commented looked nice with her eyes, though he'd said it casually enough that she wondered if she'd imagined the compliment. Promptly at 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the boarding house door. Emma, who had been pretending to read in the parlor for the past half hour, tried not to appear too eager as Mrs. Everett went to answer it. Noah stood on the porch, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance again, his hair neatly combed and his shirt crisp. Good evening, Mrs. Everett, he greeted the proprietress. I've come to call on Miss Morgan if she's available. She's in the parlor, Mrs. Everett replied, stepping aside to let him enter. Remember, the door stays open and visits end at 8. Yes, madam, Noah agreed solemnly, though Emma caught a glint of amusement in his eyes as he followed Mrs. Everett to the parlor. Miss Morgan, you have a visitor, Mrs. Everett announced unnecessarily before retreating to her sitting room across the hall, from which Emma had no doubt she would be keeping a watchful eye. Good evening, Noah, Emma greeted him, setting aside her book. Please sit down. Noah took the chair opposite hers, placing his hat on the small table between them. How are you settling in? He asked. Very well, thank you. My room is comfortable and I've spent the afternoon planning lessons for my students. Emma paused, then asked the question foremost in her mind. How did your meeting with the sheriff go? Well enough. Gave my statement, described the remaining gang members. He's sending telegrams to neighboring towns to be on the lookout. Noah hesitated, then continued. He also offered me a job. Emma's heart skipped a beat. A job here in Pueblo. Noah nodded. Deputy Sheriff says he's been looking for someone with military experience and knowledge of the territory. The pay's not much, but it's steady work. Are you considering it? Emma asked, trying to keep her voice neutral despite the hope rising in her chest. I am, Noah admitted, his eyes meeting hers. Never thought much about putting down roots before. Been drifting since the war, taking whatever work came along, but lately I've been thinking, maybe it's time to stop running. What changed your mind? Emma asked softly, hardly daring to breathe. Noah held her gaze steadily. I think you know, Emma. The simple statement, delivered without embellishment but with absolute sincerity, made Emma's heart race. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? Could this man, who had saved her life and shown her nothing but respect and kindness, possibly feel something of what she had begun to feel for him? Noah, she began, not even sure what she wanted to say. I know it's sudden, he interrupted, leaning forward slightly. We've known each other less than a week, but these past few days. He paused, seeming to search for words. I've never met anyone like you, Emma. Your courage, your determination, your kindness, the way you handled everything that happened without falling apart. Emma felt warmth spreading through her cheeks at his words. You make me sound far more impressive than I am, she demurred. No, Noah said firmly. I don't. If anything, I can't find the right words to express how remarkable you are. He took a deep breath. I don't expect anything from you, Emma, but I wanted you to know that one of the reasons I'm considering the deputy position is, well, the chance to see where this might lead, if you're willing." Emma's heart felt as though it might burst from her chest. "I'm willing," she said softly, surprising herself with her boldness. "Very willing." The smile that spread across Noah's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds, warm, bright, and full of promise. He reached across the small table between them, offering his hand. Emma placed her own in it without hesitation, thrilling at the gentle strength of his fingers as they closed around hers. "I'll speak to the sheriff tomorrow," Noah said. "Tell him I accept the position." They spent the remainder of their allotted hour discussing practical matters where Noah might find lodging in town, when Emma would begin her teaching duties, how they might navigate the social expectations of Pueblo society as their relationship developed. But beneath these mundane topics ran an undercurrent of joy and anticipation, a shared understanding that something precious and unexpected had begun between them. When the mantel clock chimed 8, Mrs. Everett appeared promptly in the doorway. "It's 8 o'clock, Mr. Tanner," she announced, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Noah rose immediately, respecting the rules of the house. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Everett," he said politely before turning back to Emma. "May I call on you tomorrow, Miss Morgan?" "I would like that very much, Mr. Tanner," Emma replied, the formality of their address belied by the warmth in their eyes. Noah bowed slightly, retrieving his hat from the table. "Until tomorrow, then. Good night, Emma." "Good night, Noah," she replied softly, watching as he followed Mrs. Everett to the door. After he had gone, Emma sat for several minutes in the quiet parlor, her mind whirling with the evening's revelations. Just 5 days ago, she had been abandoned and alone, facing almost certain death in the wilderness. Now she had a position, a home, and the beginnings of what might become the greatest adventure of her life, loving and being loved by Noah Tanner. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Emma. Her informal summer classes began with 17 children of various ages, from 6-year-old Lily Parker, who was just learning to read, to 15-year-old James Wilson, who required advanced mathematics to help in his father's store. The makeshift classroom in the church was hot and crowded, but Emma thrived on the challenge, earning the respect of both her students and their parents with her dedication and innovative teaching methods. Noah, true to his word, accepted the position as deputy sheriff and found lodging in a small cabin on the outskirts of town. His duties kept him busy patrolling the streets of Pueblo, riding out to neighboring ranches to settle disputes, and occasionally escorting prisoners to Denver for trial. But he made time every day to see Emma, whether accompanying her on walks through town, calling at the boarding house in the evenings, or simply stopping by the church to check on her classes. Their courtship progressed with a blend of propriety and genuine affection that Emma found both refreshing and exhilarating. Noah was respectful of her position as the town's teacher, careful to maintain appearances that would not compromise her standing in the community. Yet when they were alone as they could be with Mrs. Everett's vigilant chaperoning, there was an undeniable current between them, a connection that grew stronger with each passing day. By mid-August, as the new schoolhouse neared completion, their feelings for each other were obvious to anyone with eyes to see. Martha Wilson took to winking at Emma whenever she and Noah dined at the hotel restaurant. Sheriff Taylor teased his deputy about his improved grooming habits and punctuality in finishing his duties before evening visiting hours at the boarding house. Even stern Mrs. Everett had softened somewhat, occasionally allowing them to sit on the front porch swing in the evenings, though still within her line of sight through the front window. On a warm Saturday in late August, Noah invited Emma for a picnic by the river, having cleared the outing with Mrs. Everett in advance. He arrived at the boarding house promptly at 11, driving a borrowed buggy and looking uncharacteristically nervous. "You look beautiful," he told Emma as he helped her into the buggy, his eyes appreciative as they took in her light summer dress and the straw hat that shaded her face. "Thank you," she replied, feeling a flutter of anticipation at his expression. There was something different about him today, an intensity, a purposefulness that suggested this was no ordinary outing. They drove to a peaceful spot along the Arkansas River, where cottonwood trees provided shade and privacy from the occasional passing rider on the nearby road. Noah had prepared everything meticulously, a proper picnic blanket spread beneath a massive cottonwood. a basket containing cold chicken, fresh bread, early apples, and even a bottle of lemonade that Mrs. Wilson had contributed to their expedition. As they ate, they talked easily of their respective weeks, Emma's excitement about the nearly completed schoolhouse, Noah's success in tracking down a cattle rustler who had been plaguing local ranchers. It was comfortable and familiar, yet underneath ran that current of anticipation that Emma couldn't quite define. After they had finished eating and packed away the remains of their meal, Noah suggested a short walk along the riverbank. Emma agreed readily, taking his offered arm as they strolled beneath the dappled shade of the trees. They had walked perhaps 100 yards when Noah slowed to a stop beside a particularly beautiful bend in the river, where the water pooled deeply, before continuing its journey westward. "Emma," he said, turning to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "There's something I need to say to you." Emma's heart began to race as she recognized the significance of the moment. "Yes, Noah. When I found you standing alone by that trail, I thought I was just doing what any decent man would do, helping someone in trouble. I had no idea that decision would change my entire life." Noah took both her hands in his blue eyes intent on her face. "In just these few short weeks, you've become more important to me than anyone ever has been. You've made me want things I never thought I wanted: a home, a future, a purpose beyond just surviving from one day to the next." Emma felt tears welling in her eyes at his words, at the raw emotion in his voice. "I know it hasn't been long," Noah continued, "and maybe this is too soon, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. From it, he produced a simple gold band with a small, sparkling diamond. "Emma Morgan, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" The tears Emma had been holding back spilled freely now, tracing warm paths down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Noah Tanner, I will marry you." Noah's face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the sunlight filtering through the leaves above them. "I love you, Emma," he said, pulling her gently into his arms, "more than I have words to express." "I love you too," she replied, her heart overflowing with happiness, "so very much." Their first kiss, when it came, was tender and reverent, a promise, a beginning, a pledge of all that was to come. Emma felt as though she were truly alive for the first time, here in this man's arms beside a river in the Colorado wilderness. When they finally broke apart, Noah rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. "You know," he said after a moment, a hint of humor in his voice, "when I told you you'll go with me now that first day, I never imagined where that journey would lead us." Emma laughed softly, joy bubbling up inside her. "From abandonment to betrothal in less than a month, my aunt would be scandalized. Do you regret it?" Noah asked, drawing back slightly to study her face. "The speed of it all, I mean, not for a moment," Emma replied truthfully. "Some journeys take a lifetime, others take only an instant of recognition, a moment of truth. I knew you were someone special from the very beginning, Noah Tanner, and every day since has only confirmed it." They returned to town late in the afternoon, both glowing with happiness as they shared their news, first with Mrs. Everett, who pretended surprise, but didn't quite manage to hide her pleased smile, and then with Sheriff and Mrs. Taylor, who insisted on hosting an impromptu celebration dinner. Word spread quickly through Pueblo's close-knit community. By Sunday morning, when Emma and Noah attended church together, they were met with congratulations and well wishes from all sides. Mayor Simmons made a point of telling Noah he had secured the greatest treasure in the territory, while Martha Wilson engulfed Emma in a motherly hug, whispering that she'd known from the moment she saw them together that they were destined for each other. They set the wedding date for October 12th, after the school term was well underway and before the winter weather would make travel difficult for those coming from outlying areas. In the weeks that followed, Emma divided her time between her teaching duties and preparations for the wedding and their future home. Noah had been steadily improving the small cabin he'd rented, adding a proper stone fireplace, enlarging the single room into two with a dividing wall, and building furniture with his own hands. Emma contributed curtains she sewed in the evenings and quilts donated by the ladies of Pueblo, who had taken the young teacher into their hearts. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, with the aspens in the distant mountains showing their golden autumn colors. Emma, dressed in a new gown of pale blue, silk, a splurge she had justified as her only wedding, with Mrs. Wilson helping to arrange her hair and the small wreath of white flowers that served as her veil. "You look absolutely beautiful, my dear," Martha said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "That young man of yours won't know what hit him." Emma smiled, touching the locket at her throat, her mother's, the only piece of jewelry she wore besides her engagement ring. "I wish my parents could have been here," she said softly. "They would have loved Noah." "They're watching over you today," Martha assured her, patting her hand, "and they'd be so proud of the woman you've become." The small church was filled to capacity when Emma entered on the arm of Sheriff Taylor, who had kindly offered to give her away. At the altar stood Noah, looking impossibly handsome in a new suit, his eyes fixed on Emma with such love and wonder that her heart seemed to expand in her chest. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful, with Emma and Noah exchanging vows they had written themselves. "When Noah promised to cherish and protect you all the days of my life, as I have since the moment I found you," there wasn't a dry eye in the congregation. "And when Emma pledged to walk beside you through whatever paths life takes us, with gratitude for the day you came into my life," Noah himself had to blink back tears. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with the entire town seeming to participate in the festivities. There was dancing in the street, tables laden with food contributed by every household, and enough well wishes to last a lifetime. As night fell and lanterns were lit around the town square, Noah took Emma's hand and led her toward their waiting buggy, decorated with ribbons and flowers by his fellow deputies. They ran through a shower of rice and cheers, laughing as they climbed into the vehicle that would take them to their new home and their new life together. The cabin, when they reached it, had been transformed. Lanterns hung from the porch rafters, casting a warm glow over the entrance. Inside, the fireplace crackled with a welcoming blaze, and every surface held bouquets of wildflowers and candles. "Welcome home, Mrs. Tanner," Noah said softly, lifting Emma into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Emma's arms wound around his neck as she gazed at the man who was now her husband. "Home," she repeated, the word filled with wonder. "I never thought I'd have a real home again after my parents died, but home isn't just a place, is it? It's the person you share it with." "That it is," Noah agreed, setting her gently on her feet but keeping his arms around her. "And I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you always feel at home with me." The kiss they shared then was deeper, more intimate than any before, a promise of the night to come and all the nights thereafter, a commitment to the life they would build together. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their cabin, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. Abandoned and alone, she had found not just rescue but love, not just safety but purpose. The path had been dangerous and frightening at times, but it had led her here to Noah's arms, to a home and community of her own, to a future filled with promise. "What are you thinking?" Noah asked softly, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her bare shoulder. "I'm thinking that being left behind was the best thing that ever happened to me," Emma replied truthfully, "because it led me to you." Noah pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I thank God every day that I found you on that trail," he murmured. "The moment I said you'll go with me now, I had no idea I was speaking my own future into existence." Emma smiled in the darkness, nestling against his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. "I think perhaps we were always meant to find each other," she said softly. "All the loss, all the pain, all the journeys that led us to that moment, they were all leading us home." "Home," Noah echoed, his voice rich with contentment. "With you." As they drifted towards sleep in each other's arms, Emma felt a deep certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead in life in the territories would surely bring many they would face them together, with the same courage and determination that had brought them through their first perilous journey. From abandoned to beloved, from lost to found, from alone to eternally connected, Emma's heart was full with the knowledge that she had found not just a husband but a true partner for all the adventures to come. In the years that followed, the story of Emma Morgan and Noah Tanner became something of a legend in Pueblo. How she had been left behind by a wagon train, abandoned to certain death in the wilderness. How he had found her, a lone cowboy with his own troubled past, and said those now famous words, "You'll go with me now." How they had fled outlaws, faced danger together, and fallen in love against all odds. Their life together was rich with both challenges and joys. Emma's school flourished under her guidance, eventually expanding to require 2 additional teachers as Pueblo grew. Noah rose from deputy to sheriff when Taylor retired, earning respect throughout the territory for his fair-minded approach to law enforcement. Their family grew as well. Their first child, a son they named James after Noah's father, arrived a year after their wedding. He was followed 2 years later by Sarah, who had Emma's golden hair and Noah's determined spirit. Their youngest, Michael, completed their family 3 years after that, a quiet, thoughtful boy who showed his father's gift for observation and his mother's love of books. Through it all, the hard winters and dry summers, the economic fluctuations as the railroad came through, the gradual taming of the wild territory into a more settled state, Emma and Noah remained each other's steadfast supporters and dearest friends. Their love, born in danger and nurtured through shared purpose, only deepened with time and experience. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children grown and the town transformed from frontier outpost to thriving community. Noah surprised Emma with a journey not by horse this time, but by the train that now connected Pueblo to Denver and beyond. He took her to a fine hotel in Denver, where they danced and dined in celebration of their years together. Did you ever imagine, that day you found me alone on the trail, that we would be here 25 years later? Emma asked as they swayed together on the dance floor, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. Noah's arms tightened around her waist. Not in my wildest dreams, he admitted. I was just trying to do the right thing. I had no idea I was finding my heart's home. You'll go with me now, Emma quoted softly, smiling at the memory. Best words I ever heard. Best decision I ever made, Noah countered, bending to kiss her softly, and one I'd make again every day for the rest of my life. As they continued their dance, surrounded by the glittering lights of a Denver ballroom so far removed from their humble beginnings, Emma reflected that sometimes being left behind wasn't the end of a journey, but the beginning of a far greater one. From that moment of abandonment had grown a lifetime of love, a family, a community, and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. Being left behind had led her exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of the man who had found her, saved her, and loved her beyond measure. And for that unexpected blessing, Emma Morgan Tanner would be eternally grateful.